Nashville Newzine is here today with a very special guest whose name you may or may not know right away, but for sure you'll recognize his work. He's the creator, producer, director, and originally the promoter and distributor of all those cute little brown-eyed adventurous dog movies, Benji. Today we're here with Mr. Joe Camp, and thank you so much
My pleasure.
for being able to talk with you today.
My pleasure.
If my information is correct, the first Benji movie came out, what, in 1974?
You're not going to say that to all these people.
Yeah.
I mean, that was before I was born. Yeah, Actually, 1975 was the primary year. We call 74 facetiously our testing year because we were trying to figure out what we were doing with it, because we wound up having to distribute it ourselves because everybody in Hollywood turned it down.
Now, why did they turn it down from your experience?
They didn't like it. I mean, it's pretty simple.
They didn't see the dollar signs in it?
They did not see anything in it. Actually, there was one guy at Universal who's the #1 guy in distribution, told us that, you know, if I could take this movie out myself, I could make it a hit. I see the movie, but I can't do that, and I can't guarantee you that you're going to be able to, you know, count on all of these guys out in the field doing their thing. He said, what I suggest you do, because nobody cares about it more than you do, is go back and figure out how to do it yourself. And that's the last thing our chief investor wanted to hear.
Yeah,
at the time.
well, that's a tall order. Now, did Disney eventually pick up some? There were, what, 7 movies plus TV series?
Right, but no, Disney distributed one.
Yeah.
But it was all our movies have been produced independently except one, and that's Oh Heavenly Dog, that was with Chevy Chase and so forth, and Fox financed that. You know, I just finally reached a point of saying, oh, I can't do this anymore. It's too much work to do it all and so forth. And after the experience with the major studio, I decided that no, it's not too much work. There's no, you know, there's no ultimate perfect anywhere. And so, but with Benji the Hunted, we produced it independently, but Disney picked it up. I voted against it. There were 3 of us in the general partnership that financed the movie, and I voted against it. The other 2, who had primarily been responsible for bringing in the folks with the money, voted for it because they thought it'd be the greatest thing that could happen to us to be Disney. But Disney, you know, they're so proprietary that when they have something that doesn't really belong to them, you know, it serves a purpose for them, but they had a hole in their summer schedule, and that's what it was. But it doesn't get the kind of treatment that their own product does, and I assumed that was going to be the case, and it did well. It was in the top 10% of the box office for the year, but we wanted to do it the same way we'd done the original Benji. Actually,
you're in good company. Wasn't it Star Wars or something that was turned down by every major motion picture in Hollywood, and then it turns around and does?
Yeah, I mean, and ultimately it you know, wound up at Fox, and and the board of directors saw it and instructed Alan Ladd, who was at Fox at the time.
Not the Alan Ladd, the
Junior. Alan Ladd Jr. He was running the distribution side, I guess he was running the whole studio at that time. And the board of directors instructed him to not release it. And Lucas had this contract that every print that went out in the beginning was going to be 70 millimeter, full blown, you know, very expensive stuff to put out. And they told him, you know, do not release this. It's gonna bomb. And he finally talked him into releasing it into 50 theaters in the nation, 70 millimeter, the whole deal. And that probably had as much to do with the success of the movie as anything else, because you couldn't get in.
Yeah.
You know, and for I think it was 3 or 4 weeks it took for them to get, you know, shifted around and get it out into more theaters, because it was only in 50 theaters when it opened up.
You know, that happens too in the music scene. There's several artists, but one prominent one, Garth Brooks, was turned down by every major label in Nashville. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. And he ends up selling more records than any other previous country artist there was. So
happens, you know, all the time.
Yeah. Now, you were, I won't say what year because you don't want to know. I mean, you don't want everyone else to know, but you were born in St. Louis,
Yep.
And I know when, but I won't say. But the question I have here, which is of interest to the folks, is how did you end up from St. Louis making motion pictures in Hollywood? I mean, that's a leap, isn't it?
We have never made a motion picture in Hollywood.
Well, for Hollywood or for release, or
not
no?
for Hollywood even. We have never done anything in Hollywood. And
let me rephrase it then. How did you end up going from St. Louis, Missouri, into making a major motion picture? Because that's a leap in itself.
Well, that's a very long story. And there's actually a book that is just out called "Who Needs Hollywood?" that is basically the whole story of that, of what happened. Actually, I was born in St. Louis, but left at 1 year old. And between the time I was born and in the 7th grade, we lived in St. Louis, Joplin, Kansas City, Little Rock, Los Angeles, Jackson, Mississippi, and Memphis.
Wow.
And my dad was not in the service. He was an insurance investigator, and so, you know, I had no roots really anywhere, but it's something I always wanted to do. I mean, I can remember sitting in the theater at 6 or 7 years old, watching,
same story, isn't it?
You know, watching Song of the South or something from Disney, and just, you know, and I couldn't ever leave the theater just saying it was a wonderful movie. I wanted to be the person who made you feel, or made me feel, the way I was feeling, and that's what had always wanted to do. And when I was in high school,
there's Benji there.
Yep,
you want to pick her up for a moment?
Come here, kid. Oh, you've been eating too much.
The camera loves her as well. Hi, Benji.
You've been eating too much.
And your buddy?
Kiddo.
This is Reagan?
That's Reagan from next door.
Okay,
yeah.
Reagan.
There's the next door. And this is Benji number 3, star of Benji Off the Leash. And
now you got her in a pound, right?
Yes, she was
shelter.
She came from a shelter in Gulfport, Mississippi, actually.
Now here we are sitting down here in a rural area. We had our friend Raphael help us to even find you. You're in the suburbs of Bell Buckle,
right?
Which is interesting. We've never been to Bell Buckle before. We're based up, of course, around the Nashville area, but Bell Buckle's a charming little community.
It is, and we are enjoying it. We moved here from Southern California. We were living in San Diego County. Last September the 17th, the day our horses came in, and it rained 7 inches that day.
Wow.
And then never quit.
Wow.
And so we have survived the wettest fall in, I think, history, the worst winter in 25 years, the floodingest spring in history, and just finally came through the hottest early summer days that they've had in some time. So it's been interesting to...
For the folks that don't know where Bell Buckle is, it's not far. How many miles from Shelbyville, roughly?
I don't know how many miles. It's roughly 20 minutes to Shelbyville.
The walking horse capital.
But it's only 50 minutes to the Nashville airport from here, so that's nice.
So you and your wife, Kathleen, who's also a photographer. Let me ask you, it's a big move going from San Diego County to Bell Buckle, Tennessee. Why did you, or how did you, what was the reason for ending up here, other than it being beautiful and peaceful? And
well, it was, I think it was stimulated. You know, my apologies to anybody in California that, you know, or that came from California and loves it, but, you know, we called it escaping Taxifornia. Because it's, you know, the taxation that they're putting on people out there now is just ridiculous, and the costs of housing, of food, of gas, of everything. It's just absolutely insane. And we've, you know, to see our little stash begin to erode away, I said, you know, we need to start using our heads, which I've never done. I've always, you know, I've had 2 wives. My first one died of a sudden cardiac arrest in 1997, and Kathleen. Now, you know, I've been very, very blessed to have 2 compassionate, bright, smart, loving, wonderful women in my life. Well, that's both of them have had to endure the fact that I never care about the money. I care about, my passion is what we're putting out there on the screen, or what's going into a book. As we
now, do we need to verify this with Kathleen? But when you're living with a highly creative person, it takes a special something in order to live with a person like that?
I suspect she would agree with that, but she is also very, very creative. She's a lawyer, actually, and she got into, we rescued a, late in our journey with horses, you know, about 2 years into it, we rescued a Mustang that had come in pregnant from the wild, conceived in the wild, and when she came to us and I began working with her, and then she had her baby, who was just the best little horse that's ever lived, she really began to get serious and passionate about photography, because she was having to do it because I was working with the horses, and I wanted to document it for the blog and the website, and for whatever reason might come up. And she just got into it, and she's got a better eye than I do for light and for composition. You know, I've worked at it all my life, and I intellectually know what to do, but it's not anywhere near as natural and as quick as she is. And it's just gorgeous stuff on our blog, of going all the way back to when Malachi was born and so forth. It just really, really neat stuff with the horse. And the folks who follow the blog and the newsletter, you know, have really gotten into her work, because it's gorgeous. But,
well, you mentioned horse, which was really, it's a great segue into this next aspect of this interview, which I appreciate. You have a book that is fairly recent, just a couple years ago, I guess, called The Soul of a Horse.
Right.
And I told you this in an email, but I want to tell the folks too that are watching this. It's been a long time since I picked up a book in the morning and couldn't put it down until the evening, until it was done. I laughed repeatedly. I literally cried, and I was informed. One of the things that struck me about the book was you were very candid, you were very honest, and yet you dealt with some fairly controversial aspects of dealing with horses. One of them, and feel free to discuss this if you would like, one of them was the need not to have shoes, or the reason not to shoe your horse, to go au naturel, if you would.
Right.
Do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Well, you know, we're less than 4 years. I mean, when I began writing that book, we were only 1.5 years into this journey with horses. Had never had a horse or a clue, literally, and always loved them. You know, we did one Western when we were doing movies, and I, you know, was around horses all the time there, and I loved that. And you know, this have always been one of those who stops at the side of the road to watch a couple of foals play and just wish, you know, for what we have right here, which you'll see some of before you get away from here. But just always wanted, you know, to be around them and to be near them, but never had the opportunity with the travel and the work that we were doing and so forth. And we wound up buying this place out in San Diego County, in the last little bastion of ruralness in California, I think, or at least Southern California. And it sits up at the top of this hill, and there were 2 stalls, kind of half-covered little stable stalls that were just down the hill from the house that came with the property. And we'd sit up there and watch the sunset in the afternoon, and look down on those stalls and say, gee, wouldn't it be nice if there was a couple of horses wandering around in those stalls, you know, a picture postcard with the horses and the sunset and all of that. And, you know, we need to go on a trail ride someday and just kind of check them out, see if we want to do that. And one April morning, I was drug out of bed and thrown in the car, and I said, what's going on? It was my birthday. And I knew immediately something was happening for the birthday. I didn't know what. And she said, just get in the car. We're going somewhere. She drives down the hill and into this park. And there's a horse trailer with 3 horses saddled and a lady who brought it. And so we went out and on this 6-hour trail ride. And 3 weeks later, we owned 3 horses.
Yeah.
And I can promise you that a 6-hour trail ride is not a good reason to go out and buy 3 horses. And what I didn't know at the time is Kathleen was petrified the whole time. She was petrified the whole 6 hours she was out on these horses. And yet when it came down to buying these horses, she never told me. She never let on to any of that. And a lot of of critics have called it, you know, a love story of various kinds, but that's one of them. It's because she, you know, subordinated that fear that she had of horses, because there was a time in my life where I needed something passion. I needed some passion to be running, and she saw it coming, and she went with it. And you know, her whole fear thing didn't come out until about 6 months later. But yeah, we truly did not have a clue. And there's a fellow by the name of Monty Roberts, who is the guy that they patterned the, you know, the Robert Redford movie, The Horse Whisperer, after. And until they kind of broke with his philosophy, he was the consultant on that movie. And he wrote a book that they had patterned that whole thing after, called The Man Who Listens to Horses. It's sold, you know, just, I think it's somewhere around 5 million copies right now. And he literally listened. He went out and did research with the wild horses and learned their language and how they speak to each other and what they do and so forth. And we were fortunate enough to kind of fall into, not really knowing him or meeting him, but we were making our kind of obligatory trip that new horse owners have to make to Boot Barn, and you know, getting our stuff lined up to bring these horses in. And Kathleen picked up a magazine or a newspaper or something there, and we were sitting with the kids eating hamburgers at an In-N-Out, which is a great hamburger place in California. And she was reading this article to me about Monty Roberts and a process he has that he calls join up, which is using the language of the horse. And in 30 minutes, he will take a horse that's never been touched, bridled, handled, ridden, or anything, and take it in and give the horse the choice to join up with him and to accept a blanket, a saddle, a rider, and be done in 30 minutes. You
tried that technique, if I understand, on your horse Cash,
that's
right?
the first thing that happened. Because we got home that day, and I ordered his DVD and his book, just bam, right off the shot, and I was just blown away that he could do all of this in 30 minutes. And so, yeah, the very first thing when Cash came to us as one of the first 3 is I took him down to the round pen. And just petrified, absolutely petrified, because I had no clue what I was doing other than the fact I'd seen this and watched it and studied it and was going to try to duplicate it. And when that horse went through the process and gave all the signals that Monty said they were going to give, just right on cue, just the way he said it was going to happen, and I turned my back and turned around and lowered my energy and waited for him to make the choice.
And how long was it?
Come to me. I don't know, it seemed like hours, but it was probably a minute or 2.
Yeah.
And when he came up and I felt his breath on my ear, I broke down and bawled.
Yeah.
I just started crying.
Absolutely.
Right there on the spot. And I said at that moment that, you know, that I was no longer a horse owner. I was a friend, a partner, a comrade, and I promised him that I would do the very best for him that I could. And the problem that we had is I didn't know what that was. It led me ultimately to research on wild horses, and a fellow named Jamie Jackson, who had gone out and spent an enormous amount of time with wild horses and photographing the feet of wild horses. And he used to be a farrier and had become a natural trimmer, I guess you call it, for barefoot horses. But the research that he had done got me started, because these horses have beautiful feet. And when you stop and think about a horse being a flight animal, a prey animal, the most important thing to them in the wild is their feet. Every horse that is around in the domestic scene has the ability to grow as good a foot as those horses out in the wild, and as strong and sound a foot as those horses out in the wild.
Why do you think, is it just tradition, is it just conditioning in the minds of people that do want to shoe their horse? And I guess if they want to, it's their horse, they can. You're not going to start a riot against them. But why do you think it's difficult for them to see that this is better maybe for them?
Well, I think that you grow up. I mean, it's been going on for, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years, and you grow up believing that this is the way it's done, and that your horse is going to be in trouble. And there's another point to it, that when you take the shoes off of some horses, let me back up. When it finally went off, the light went off in my head, and I said they're coming off. It's when I learned that a horse's hoof is supposed to flex. With every impact with the ground, it flexes. And what that flexing does is suck an enormous amount of blood into the hoof count. I used to think it was just a big old wad of fingernail. It's a very complex mechanism inside the hoof, and very vascular. Lots of blood circulating in there that keeps it healthy and makes it, you know, grow right and do what it's supposed to do. And when he lifts the foot up and it flexes back, it also shoots it back up the leg, which helps the heart. A horse that is barefoot has a 10% on average lower heart rate than a horse that's wearing shoes, because the heart doesn't have to work as hard to get the blood back up. There's also a hydraulic shock absorption effect, that when it sucks all that blood in, it's protecting the ligaments and the joints and the entire leg, actually, by giving it a hydraulic liquid, you know, base to land on. And so I dug, you know, deeper into that, but then I said, that's it, you know, to be
How many horses do you have here?
We have 6 now.
6 of them. Can we take a look?
Yeah.
You still have Cash, right?
Right.
And maybe you can show us a little bit of where they are.
Yeah, we'll be happy to.
We're going to go down and take a look at that.
Okay, we're here at the barn, and it's getting close to feeding time, so they're beginning to gather around out of the 31 acres of pasture that they've been wandering on. And I can see our Mustang is in there. Before we do anything, I want you to meet all the horses. Before we do that, I want you to meet Kathleen.
Oh, I'm not a horse.
I know. My sweetie, she's the one who was afraid of horses for so long. And she has come a long way in
Yes.
what she does with the horses and the way she takes care of them. And that happens to be Mr. Cash, sitting right out there, the soul of a horse, and he's my boy. And to our left, his right, is our Mustang Rescue, who has never had a lead rope owner. That's a good boy. He's smiling. Good. He's a good boy. He's a good boy. I can't do that with our Mustang right now, but there are others. Skeeter, who is Kathleen's sofa, a big Palomino, and I'm going to see if he'll walk out with me. He's a good boy. Doesn't he have a foot? That's a good boy. That's a real good boy. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you very much. Oh, the other one. That's good. That's good. Bring it up. Oh, thank you.
You're in the way of the treats. Come on. This is Skeeter. He is about 23 years old, and I call him the sofa because it's like riding on a couch, which has taken me leaps and bounds from where I was with the fear, because he's a very gentle, sweet, loving boy, and he's happy to not be roping or doing dressage or any of that stuff, because I'm just a trail rider, so he likes that.
He's a good boy.
She is the reason why I don't send Joe anywhere with a 3-horse trailer and only 2 horses in it, because he came home with her when I wasn't there.
When she was about 7 months.
She was about 7 months old, and she was a rescue that was at a clinic that Joe was invited to go to at Monty Roberts' week-long horse clinic. And I sent him and my youngest son and 2 horses so they could show what they know how to do based on Monty, and then came home with Mouse, a rescue from Iowa.
Come on out, Mariah. Mariah, come on.
Hello.
Come on.
Hey, guys.
Come on.
Hey, guys. Oh, that's so sweet.
Come on.
Very
Come
sweet.
on. Walk with me. Come on.
Get a treat. Get a
Come on. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. We got too many out here.
Okay, cut. Bring in Benji.
And then we put hay, little hay in the gator. Will y'all quit it? And drive up into the pasture, scattering hay so that they have to go a long ways to get it. And then we generally sit up there and commiserate with them for half an hour or so after, after we run out of hay. We just sit there and they'll come and nibble off the back end of the gator. And see, we had a bottle of wine up there last night and she came up and pulled the cork out of it.
Okay, so for Nashville Newzine, this is Conrad Nodden with Mr. Joe Camp, and thanks again so much for all the fine information and getting to know a little more about you and your setup here. Thoroughly enjoyed it.